get started. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you to join us today to start talking about a topic that we know that is really important for our industry. It affects thousands of workers from their health and well-being, but also we know it's going to have a significant impact on productivity. So just to get you started, my name's Jenny Armstrong. I'm the MD of Construction Health and Wellbeing Limited, and I'm hosting today's webinar. And I'm really excited that we're joined by the team from GKR, who are going to be sharing some of their insights to some of the work that they've been doing, and also Heather Chapman from SOTA, who is over in the States, who's joining us to share a little bit more about the technology and the work that she's been doing. So hopefully many of you can see the Q&A box at the top. So we'll encourage you just to add some questions as we go through today's session. Feel free to put any comments in the chat. I think we can see those afterwards. Okay, so let's get started. Just to start us off, I just kind of want to set the scene a little bit with what we are doing at the moment around manual handling. So we know it's an integral part of what the construction industry is all about. We know that we're doing some great things to try and eliminate and to change some of the challenges that our workers are faced. But really the question is, are we doing enough? Now, if you look at some of the statistics that we can see here, we know from the HSE that 53% of all the days lost to work-related ill health are in relation to musculoskeletal disorders. Now, this is people that are having to take time off work. This doesn't count for all those people that are working and having to continue on their daily duties with some challenges that they might be facing. If it's back pains, knee pains, musculoskeletal disorders, there's something that we know that's impacting many of our workers. We also know from a study that was done in 2018 by the ICE that the cost of occupational ill health is estimated to be about £848 million to employers every single year. And to kind of build down to that a little bit more, they evaluated this and found that 76% of that is actually related to musculoskeletal disorders. And they estimated that they reckon for every person that has a musculoskeletal disorder, this costs about £12,000 per person. This is to look at things like, turnover of staff, lost productivity, and doesn't include things like HSE claims. So we know this has a massive impact on the health and well-being, but equally the economical impact it has on all of our businesses. So today we're going to be looking at how do we move this forward? How do we make sure that we take this further? And we look at perhaps some of the progress the industry has made around mental health, and we can see that we have, as an industry, come together and been proactive and made some changes. But when we look at manual handling and musculoskeletal disorders, we know there is a lot more work to do. So what I would like to do now is hand over to our first speaker, which is Lee Rosewell from GKR Scaffolding. Lee, I'll let you introduce yourself and share your perspective on what we're talking about today.
Lovely. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for the kind introduction. So for those that don't know me, I'm Lee Rosewell. I'm the MD of GKR Scaffolding, and I have to say how excited I am about this collaborative journey that obviously Construction Health and Wellbeing and SOTA, where we are today. We believe that the technology that we've been piloting over the last 6 weeks will be the future for manual handling training, not just in scaffolding, but the industry wide. We're also the first scaffolding business in Europe to have been using this and taking the data from the wearables. I'm proud to be sitting here today, as like I said, through the collaboration and what we've achieved, not only just to improve the safety, but the health through innovation and technology that is now available to us. It's vital that our business is not perceived it's vital that our business is not perceived as this as a vanity project. It has to add value to our people and our business, and this will be demonstrated later on through Peter, Tommy's and Heather's presentation. I know this firsthand because I have spent 35 years in the industry and coming off the tools myself, and more recently how hard it is attracting people into the scaffolding industry because it's associated with bad back, absent days off through manual handling. My transition at the age of 23 coming from the tools and into the office was actually going to a back injury myself. If the technology that we have today, and more so with the SOTA technology that we've trialed, I truly believe that we would have attained a lot more of the people that I used to work with back then on the tools. And with the technology we now have and the partnering that we've done with Salter and the training that we can now offer through GKR, we would significantly be able to reduce the injuries that we have in the future, improving the longevity of not only their careers, but the benefit that that will have not only to our business, but the industry wide. We also recognise that each person has different capabilities, and a one-size-fits-all training course will not meet everybody's needs. We've engaged Salter for this unique opportunity with what AI can bring to us and our business. One thing I'd like to state, we have not solved the challenges yet, but we wanted you to participate in today's webinar to share our current learnings and future direction. So on that, I would now like to hand over to Heather to present in more detail the technology and how they are supporting us and offerings that can support not only us, but the entire construction industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Jenny. Hello, everyone. Greetings from the cold state of Michigan. I'm happy to join you today. I'm Heather Chapman of Soter. I've been with Soter since 2018. I've worked in the HSE field for about 25 years, and I've worked with a lot of different industries and organizations, and I find over the years that there's a few common threads regardless of the industry you're in. One of those threads is ergonomics. Every organization, every industry faces the challenges of solving these ergonomic risk factors. When I started with Soter, my goal and the goal with Soter was to start promoting this type of technology that can be more proactive in preventing these MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders. So to set the stage for the Soter technology and then leading into Tommy and Lee's or Pete's presentation, the platform consists of two main components, and one of those is the wearable technology. So what you're seeing on the screen is the Soter device, and it's small, it's very lightweight, but it's powerful. And what this device does is coaches people in real time. So as they wear the device, if they do high-risk movements like bending at the waist or twisting of the spine or reaching overhead, the device gives real-time feedback in the form of a beep and a vibration. What that does and what we've seen over the years is over the course of 2 weeks, it helps change people's behaviors. So it teaches them how to move in a way that reduces those high-risk movements. Now, I often say why they're changing, I don't really care. They could be changing because they're purely interested in reducing their risk of injury, or they could be changing behavior simply because they don't want to hear this device beep at them anymore. And that's okay, because as long as the device isn't beeping at them or giving them notifications, it means that they're moving in more neutral postures, and that's exactly what we want. So this single device can be worn on the back, like you see on the screen here. And in that position, it's in spine mode. So it's going to be looking for those spinal movements that could put somebody at risk. Or it could be worn on the bicep in an arm strap. And in this mode, it's looking for shoulder movements. We, of course, have adapters so that it can be worn on a hard hat. And then for our friends in warehousing and logistics, we have adapters to fit on headsets. Great thing about this type of technology, for Soter at least, no Wi-Fi is required. It doesn't have to connect to anybody's cell phone. And because we do realize there are lots of people that work in the field and don't always have access to charging stations, the battery life is about 3 weeks, which is pretty fantastic for this type of tech. So when I speak of notifications, I said it was the beep and the vibration. When it's worn in shoulder mode, it's looking for arm elevation. So anytime somebody's reaching overhead or out in front of them greater than 90 degrees, it's going to give a beep and a vibration. It's going to look for pushing and pulling. So that open arm pushing, pulling of pallet jacks or construction materials. it's going to give a beep and vibration. It's looking for overexertion. So when we have enough arm elevation in the course of a workday, it's going to let you know that you're exerting too much effort, energy on that shoulder, and it's going to give you that beep and vibration. Now, we also look for static arm elevation and repetitive arm movements. We don't give notifications for those simply because if you can imagine repeating the same movement more than 2-3 times in a minute and it beeps at you an additional time, it just becomes overwhelming. So we simply track all of this information and we feed it to a dashboard. So as your employees are getting that real-time notification and coaching, you're actually seeing all of that on your dashboard as well. So that dashboard's private to your organization. Nobody else can see it, but you start to have access to all of those hazardous movements that your employees are doing. Why that's amazing? Well, now we can start to see by site, by department, by job role, what types of hazards are present and how frequently they're getting performed throughout the course of the workday. When we look at the spine mode, so it's worn on the back of the vest or the shirt collar, it's looking for poor bending, back twisting, and intense bending. Intense bending, let's just call that like the velocity of the movement. When somebody picks up something heavy or awkward, their muscles often jerk and it's not very smooth, or they could be picking it up with intensity. That device can feel that. It understands that and it will provide notifications. It doesn't know how heavy that object is, but it is feeling the muscle movement and can trigger if we have some intense bending activities. And same thing, we are looking for awkward static posture and repetition. We're not giving notifications for those, but you will see it on your dashboard. When we start to get all of this information, sometimes people struggle with, what do I do with all of this information? Now I've started to understand which departments or which job roles are generating a lot of these hazardous movements and therefore represent the greatest risk of injury. What do I do with this information? Well, you should use your dashboard to help drive some decision making. So now that we see where these risks are at, let's focus in on the top 3 job roles that are generating the most risk. One thing that you can do is use the other piece of SODR's platform. This is SODR Genius. It's an AI platform that basically analyzes your images and videos. So let's say that we've now understood a particular task in the scaffolding industry that's generating a lot of hazardous movements. I can now take my phone, go out there, record a short video of somebody performing that task, and I can have SODR Genius analyze it. And I can have SODR Genius analyze it for ergonomic risk factors, any general safety risk factors like you're seeing on the screen here. And then I can also ask it for productivity and assessments. How could I make this job actually more productive, more efficient? And then I can even ask it, how can I solve some of these problems? So essentially, this is a massive problem-solving database at your fingertips. And how did we design this? How did we build this? Well, SODR Genius right now is built on all OSHA. So in the States, we have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It is built on every single one of their standards in general industry and construction. All of the inspections and violations that have ever occurred are national emphasis programs. It uses this as a repository. It's the knowledge base. We also have Australia set up, Canada, and we're working on Europe. We anticipate having European regulations in this knowledge base by October. So essentially how this works is when you upload a video or an image, you tell it where you're located. So I might be in the UK. I would simply say UK, and it's going to analyze that image and pull from any UK HSE regulations or standards. It essentially uses that as its knowledge base for providing you any sort of violations. If anybody's been cited for those in the past, what did those citations cost a company? And then it might give you some recommendations. How could you mitigate this violation? We can create additional knowledge bases for Soder Genius as well. So if you have company policies or internal documentations that you want Soder Genius to also pull from, that's a secondary knowledge base that we can set up. Essentially, you can use this to create your risk register, help with incident investigations, and essentially solve some of your not only ergonomic issues, but any potential safety issues as well. So how does this work? Let's look at Soder Genius as it analyzes a task for an MSD risk. Now, this is GKR. This was the beginning of our journey with the scaffolding company here, and this is purely set up for demonstration purposes. It's not something they would normally do, but they were curious to see what would come of the technology when we test this out. So we took a short video, and you can see here, as it's going through the process, you were able to see the angle of movement of all of those body parts in real time. If there's a weight associated with it, you saw that I went in and I said, hey, I want to add a weight. We can add weight so it now knows, hey, that thing that guy was lifting, it actually weighed 75 pounds. And then we can start to see, all right, well, the back was in a high risk position for 30% of the time. The left arm was about 60%. Now I understand which body parts for the duration of that video were in those high risk positions. Now, when I start to make changes, I want to see that red basically disappear from this graph. I want to introduce interventions that will give me a lot of green in this chart, and I can start to change the way somebody's working through engineering controls or a process change. I can now take that same video that we just looked at, and I'm going to ask Soder Genius, how do I solve this problem? First, tell me what some of the ergonomic risk factors are. So as it's scrolling through, it's identifying the hazards. It's identifying the risk that could happen because of that hazard. It's using a risk matrix in the background to identify what's the level of risk. Is it low, medium, high? And then it's going to give some control measures. What can we do to potentially mitigate that risk? Well, now it gave me a few answers, and I asked, all right, well, what type of mechanical aids or pulley systems could I use to bring that product up? And it's going to start to give me all sorts of solutions. I could have uploaded any image, any video, and gone through this same process. But as I mentioned, this was just a trial with GKR. I could have followed up on this query with Soder Genius and said, how much would some of these systems cost? And Soder Genius will actually start to give me some budgetary pricing. So now it's giving me not only potential solutions, but it can give me vendors and it can give me projected costs as well. Now, I've gone through, I've analyzed for MSD risk, I've asked some queries and questions, and now I'm about to make some changes. This is not GKR, this is just an example for the purposes of this webinar. But here we have a gentleman who's building door jambs, and you can see he's looking down quite a bit in the original video here. We went and made a couple of changes, and all we did was added a ledge on there that was a few inches in height, and we were able to reduce the risk by almost 40%. Now that's the risk of a neck injury, because you can see here, we were about 60% of the time in moderate risk for the neck. With the introduction of that change, we were able to reduce that significantly. And again, as I mentioned, we want to see a lot of green. We were able to accomplish that. And with Soder Genius, I can now say with certainty, the intervention of this change actually reduces risk by 40%. Now I know that the change I'm making is the correct change, and it's going to give me the intended result that I want. So I'm going to turn this over to Tommy and Pete now so that they can talk us through their experience and journey so far with Soder's technology.
Thank you, Heather. That was very well delivered. My name's Tommy. I work in the health and safety team alongside Peter, who's our health and safety director. My role is as health and safety advisor. So the idea of approaching SOTA, I mean, us at GCAR, we was extremely keen to look at new innovative solutions of how we approach manual handling and scaffolding. Myself, I'm the third generation of my family to work in industry. I've seen firsthand my father and my grandfather and how they've suffered with manual handling related injuries. So at the start of the year, when we kind of took the SOTA application on board, myself, Peter, Lee and the wider GCAR team, we became mission focused onto changing the industry for the better. So manual handling and scaffolding. So the NASC, who act as our trade body, so they're the National Association of Scaffolding Contractors, they issue a yearly health and safety report which generates various analytics, trends across our trades throughout the United Kingdom. And their report last year, they attributed the most common cause of injury to be manual handling related, and slips and trips, for example, which was second and only second for the first in 18 years, that it wasn't the most common cause of injury. So what that tells me is we're changing the risk perception on site for the better, working at height, which should be our bread and butter, our protocols and our processes that we put in place, it is improving. However, there's this overarching theme that we've always seen within our industry of those kind of injuries that are manual handling related. So that's why embedding SOTA analytics into what we're doing, which has been a fantastic application so far that we've seen on site, has gone extremely well. And we've received various data that's really going to change us for the better. And yeah, in essence, that is kind of manual handling in scaffolding.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Hi, everybody. My name's Peter Cullen. I'm the Health and Safety Director for GCAR Scaffolding. Tommy, what you gave there was a summary of what's actually, it's important to note this, what's actually been reported and how significant manual handling exposure in the scaffolding industry affects our business and our people. What we've done, we've actually gone, I guess, one step further, and we've done a business case. So we send all of our scaffold operatives and our yard operatives a questionnaire which was completed anonymously. And the results were, I guess they reinforced the statistics that we already know. In the past 3 months, just over half, that's 51% of our workers had experienced aches and pains. It's commonly affected the backs and the knees. 63% has experienced pains throughout their scaffolding career. So we know there's an impact there. 23% have had to take time off work in their career. We don't want anybody taking off work. Nearly 1/4% of our people, and 24% of their MSK issues were caused or made worse by work. And this is also the last point on here is very interesting, that 30% continue to work when they knew they should have rested, and I guess that's linked to them with pay and obviously reputation with the work at all. But I guess what it is here is that we know that we've got to be doing more. There's some great stuff that's being done. There's manual handling training and we do risk assessment. But with us at GCAR Scaffolding, we feel that there's more to be done. And this is why we started this journey with SOTA and investing in the technology. So if I go to the next slide, what does this mean for us as a business and what are the deliverables? So I don't think we fully understand, or in fact, I know we don't fully understand the actual specific exposure to manual to operatives or to our people through manual handling in the industry. So that's one, and that's very, very important. And like Heather mentioned before, it's the change in the individual's behaviour. So when they're wearing the device, it's that notification straight away where they can stop and think in real time. Can I be doing something different? Can I be closer to the load? Can I be facing the right directions? Am I stooped over? Am I bent over? Is my back in the right angle? So that's very important to us. Okay, so with the device where it is given the individual's notification and they cannot actually make that individual correction, so the device keeps beeping, this is where we really need to home in into what's happening. So where the device, as I say, it gives different beeps and different alerts to them, where they cannot change that individually, we've actually asked them to write down what tasks they're taking out and they're carrying out at the time. And that's where we can really home in to, and Heather did a great job in showing the video analysis, where we can start using our mobile devices through SOTA to video them. And then that goes into task-specific risk assessments that we can do. We know, as in scaffolding, we cannot eliminate working at height, and we cannot fully eliminate handling. So this will, as I say, be able to really let us home into giving task-specific risk assessments. Whether we can't, as I say, we can't eliminate it, can we engineer tasks out? Probably we can. We can raise levels or lower levels, but probably we'd be looking more at reduction, so reducing the actual exposure to manual handling. And also, there's another deliverable on this we're really interested in, is that we work across a lot of different, a lot of various multitude projects. Some of the projects that we come onto have great manual handling, or sorry, mechanical lifting aids. We can come on, obviously we can use lorry cranes, there's tower cranes, there's hoists are on. So we can use this comparable data where we do have these, as I say, resources on projects to help us reduce or eliminate manual handling, to the projects we work on that don't have these resources in place. And that's really interesting for us, and we're hoping to look at the data and share that with the whole construction as well, and work with our clients on how we can actually improve and reduce the exposure to manual handling that our operatives and our people are faced with day in, day out.
Thanks, Pete. So like any research project, we wanted to put the tech out there, test, see how it works for us as a business, how our individuals will receive it, what kind of parameters we need to measure, and the kind of variables that we can produce in our case study moving forward. So we developed a pilot study, which we launched across our logistics hub in Kent, which we thought would be a good environment because you have a lot more economical control over there. And then we chose 2 projects in London, which presented different site constraints and challenges in themselves. So we thought straight away we can measure not only the task, individual and the load, but also the environment that we're putting our guys into work. And across our pilot study, so when I went out and I got the guys signed up to the application, I'll be honest, and I've said it to people, they were all initially skeptical to begin with because they're thinking, what on earth, you give me this little microchip that I'm going to wear to work? However, over the course of the initial 2 weeks, the guys extremely bought into it. Not only did they start competing amongst each other and who could record the best data, who can show the kind of the best manual handling techniques and working methods, but they actually, more importantly, they was competing with themselves. So we saw day in, day out, gradual improvements in their techniques, their postures, from the guys that are heavily experienced within the industry to the newer guys that we're bringing in. They all worked together and collaborated together to actually get a real understanding of kind of what working as a scaffolder takes on the body. And as we kind of got to the end of the program, me and Peter and Lee, we started looking through the data, trying to get to grips with the kind of numbers that was getting through the SOTA application. And then we started to see some really interesting variables pop up. So for example, factors such as job role are more experienced than, say, technical scaffolders, for example, that'll be undertaking more challenging work, etc. Their data really fluctuated quite heavily because they was restricted into the environment and the tasks that they could work on. Then our labourers, for example, have a bit more control of the loads they can carry, their site environment. Their data, they showed heavy improvements because coming into the industry, we've identified a gap between myself, Peter and Lee of manual handling training. That's why we're so pushing this amongst our workforce, especially the guys that are coming in. We say, look, be proactive now rather than reactive 20 years down the line when you start getting niggles and pains in your back, because once it goes, it goes. And that was our pilot study in essence. So now we've launched this again across 2 different projects. We started to measure all these different variables. We're recording the tasks that the guys are working with, and then we can kind of risk assess for the better moving forward. So I'll just hand over back to Pete and he'll go through the training program.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. It was certainly very interesting, wasn't it? The pilot study that we carried out, and I think, like Heather said earlier as well, is that whether they get bored or annoyed with the notifications that are coming through. And a few of our guys actually, our people actually said that it sort of trains the brain, doesn't it? As when it's beeping, is can I do something different at the time? And one of our people was saying that he did actually start getting annoyed with the notifications that are coming through, and it changed, and it was that sort of, I guess, muscle memory almost, or behaviour from the notifications triggering the brain to make them improvements. So that was great to see. So right, so what's our training program look like? And we took a lot of learnings from the pilot study. One thing we did learn immediately is that we didn't spend enough time with our people actually talking about our objective, the benefits that SOTA can bring to our people. So what we do is we spend enough time or sufficient time with our people. We sit them down, we talk about our objectives, what it can do, what the training program looks like. We also, towards the end of the program, the workshop, is we do refresher training on manual handling. This is just to refresh our people on the correct, whether it's kinetic lifting techniques or the movements, mechanical aids that are available to them, so that when they do put the device on and they get that notification, it's fresh in their minds. Okay, so the first day, our people actually wear these for 20 days in total, and that's split into two phases. First phase is 10 days, then they have a week off, and then the second phase is obviously the remaining 10 days. So the first day that our people wear the devices, we don't actually turn any notifications on. The AI technology within is actually calibrating and getting to know the person themselves and getting used to them. So the second day, the devices or the notifications do go on. As soon as they take the device out and they plug it back into the hub, they get an update of what movements and what corrective actions that they've been it's been happening. But more importantly, we're going to leave them in the first 10 days. After the 10 days, we sit down, we do another workshop, and we go through the whole data. As I said earlier, then first 10 days, we'll actually be noting what tasks the scaffold operatives and the yard operatives are undertaking, where they cannot actually make that individual change. So we'll be taking that and looking at data over the next 7 days from phase 1. Phase 2, as I say, we've reviewed the data, we've communicated that with our people, we've looked at the tasks which cannot be individually changed, and that's where we'll be really focusing on is the next 10 days of the phase 2 of the training program is taking video analysis of the tasks where, as I say, the individuals cannot make the changes, and that will then lead us to developing task-specific risk assessments and also making the difference of showing the individuals the data that's I guess the changeable data from what they've done in the first 10 days of phase 1 to the second 10 days. And then we can go away, as I say, and really risk assess the specific tasks on where we're struggling or the individuals are struggling, so we can reduce the risk to an acceptable level through manual handling exposure. So I'm now going to go, this is a snapshot of what we've done, just to show this will be in phase 2 of the training program, so the last 10 days. What we've done here, one of our people, it's actually one of our operatives, which is Luke. We've given him head tasks through quite a basic scaffolding task. He is wearing a device, but he's got no notifications, and we've carried out the video analysis. So I'm actually going to start this now. Here we go. So you can see here that the video analysis is showing where the bad posture is or where the risk is to the person themselves. As I say, this is where the operative is not getting any notifications at all, or he hasn't seen any video analysis. So I'm just going to be quiet and let this roll out. And then we're going to go on to what happens once we've shown in the video analysis and we turn the notifications on. And you can see the data on the right-hand side here, which is split into body position or body parts, where the high risk is of the percentage of the time that he is being videoed. Okay, so that's pre. Let's have a look at the post. So what we've done here, I'm going to start and talk sort of over the video while it's going through, is we showed Luke the video analysis of where the red lines were coming up and where the risk to exposure of manual handling was. He's now getting alerted as well. You can see already by the statistics there's a great improvement. And the next slide, which is actually our final slide, will show the summary of both at the same time. And this was all actually done within sort of 10 or 15 minutes. So it's incredible to see, as I say, from a pilot study of having over 40% of increases without actually sort of running the actual training program as we are now, to what we can see now within, as I say, 10 or 15 minutes of how significantly his movement and manual handling techniques have increased or improved, actually. And here we go. This is sort of the data comparison, as we can see. So there is a reduction in the back. There's more of a, as I say, an increase in the legs, but I think that's just showing that Luke is actually using his legs rather than his back himself. So with that, I will pass over to Jenny in a moment, but I'd like to thank all of firstly, the speakers, and thank all of the audience for joining us on this. I hope you found it as exciting, as interesting as what we have, and obviously with what the potential possibilities that we have with this technology and what we're doing and with our journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Pete. I think there might have been a slight challenge at the end. There were some of the videos playing, so we've got them available if anyone would like to see them afterwards. So I'd just like to open up now for some Q&A. I think some of you might have popped your hand up. I think you might have to use the Q&A box. I don't think your microphones are enabled for you to speak. I think, Marie, you've got your hand up. I will just try and unmute you, but I think it's not going to work. Let's try. Yeah, sorry, Maria. I know you got your hand up. It's not gonna work. So if you can pop something into the chat or to the Q&A box. Okay, right. Let's go to some of the questions. I've had one question that's come through, and I think, Tommy, I'll come straight to you if that's okay. How was this perceived by the people when you started to brief them out about it?
So initially, when I kind of went across to our operatives, scaffolders being scaffolders, you really have to get them to buy into it. But initially they were skeptical. Once we started rolling the technology out, once they started seeing the data, but more importantly, the actual improvements they were making, you could actually see a real enthusiasm and a buy-in from every single operative on site. They were telling me what kind of tasks they were doing. They were trying to give me recommendations that maybe we could look for the better. So overall, initially, to be completely honest, they was initially skeptical. But as we started rolling the program out, we gave them a lot of encouragement, training workshops, support. We was on hand to go run through the data with them, crunch the numbers. The buy-in just increased by a huge amount, to be fair.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know sometimes it's quite hard to convince people of something new and different. So yeah, you've done a great job at getting them to buy into it. We've got a question from Michael. Pete, I think, no, actually, I think I'll come to you, Heather. So one of the questions that we've got in the chat is about, has the software data ever been used in a court of law? I mean, I know it's really new into the UK, so I can imagine this probably hasn't even had the chance to get into to any courtrooms. And has this been able to use any, have you known of this being able to use as a supporting evidence in any legal cases?
Yeah, to my knowledge, it hasn't been used in any court cases. I can see where it may come to fruition, though, to support an organization in a legal case against a work comp injury. I could see that happening. To my knowledge, it has not come to that at this moment in time. The other question, what feedback have you had from lawmakers on the strength of the data? Again, because we've not even really had a case that's used it, we've not had any sort of feedback from lawmakers. What I will say is this past fall, I was at a conference and spoke with he was from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration here in the States, and they're very interested in having access to this type of technology. Although I suspect there'll be way too many hurdles for them to use it, I think that lawmakers are actually quite interested in this type of data. It's very objective information.
I think, Jenny, do you mind if I just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's very difficult for us, isn't it, to get a measure of an employee that comes to us, certainly in the scaffolding industry, of where their health is, as in sort of back, because obviously we know that it's degenerative, isn't it? It goes over a certain period of time. So I think it's very, very important for us at GKR is that what we are doing with, you know, using SOTA, the technology, is we're going above and beyond what is actually out there at the moment, so that we're trying to protect our people. As I say, it is very, very difficult. We're still recruiting people of the age where they come through as an apprentice or they come through 35 or 40 years old. So that's very important to us, is that as I say, it's not, although we're protecting the business as such, it's looking after our people, isn't it? But I think it's very, very hard to use that sort of data to in a court of law anyway, because it's what's happened before SOTA, isn't it, to the individual.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Actually, Tommy, I'll come back to you. I had a question about how the alerts are heard in noisy environments. Have you had any problems with that, with testing it out on some of the sites you've used it on?
So the notifications the guys will get, so it's vibrations and also sound notifications. So a lot of the time the guys, they tell me all day they know when they've gone wrong, they can hear the notifications. In terms of wearability, the guys after a few days, they say they don't even notice it's there. Obviously they still hear the vibrations and stuff like that, but it's not as if it's causing any discomfort or it's actually making their work activities any more difficult. The only thing that they do tell me is that they're actually more aware of the vibrations and notifications that they're getting. So obviously there's settings on the device where you can kind of, you can turn it up, you can turn it down, for example. So there's a lot of maneuverability with that. But the guys, I haven't had any complaints so far in terms of comfort. They said after a few days you wouldn't even notice it was there. So.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tommy. Just wondering, you might know this, Heather, but one of the questions has been asking about, do you know if it's been used on any other construction activities, such as formwork or false work, or anything from perhaps in the States as well, that have been using it for?
Yeah, we have a few construction companies in the States using it, as well as a couple in Europe and one in Australia as well.
Yep.
Probably can't name names, but yes, it's getting used in all industries.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, another question. Okay, so a question about gamification. I think, Tommy, you spoke a little bit about the competitive element. What were the thoughts of the work? So what are your thoughts on workers viewing it as a competition to improve performance? Maybe Tommy and Pete.
Yeah, to be honest, at the end of the day, I don't see no harm in it. Encourage the guys to compete amongst themselves. Like the SOTA dashboard, for example, it gives you, icons, awards. For example, if you've shown considerable improvements in your manual handling behaviour, and me and Pete, we'll try and provide incentives for the guys and stuff like that. And as soon as the word Nando's was mentioned, all of a sudden the guys are right on it. So yeah, it does no harm. It does no harm. But more importantly, the attitude is of the guys that they're actually observing and changing their own behaviour. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that the visibility of what they're doing is a massive benefit if it leads to a Nando's at the end of it as well. Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'm just checking through the more questions. So I've got another question. Okay, good. So we've had a comment from Kerry talking about this is a good opportunity to link the subjective data to, as well as the employee experience and the business outcomes. So I think just looking forward to seeing more about that. And I think actually some of the conversations we've had about the opportunities with SOTA, we're still such in the really early stages of really understanding it. And there is so much more of the data and particularly the link with productivity, how much we can potentially get from this. But yeah, very early stages in understanding what's actually available to us. A question about, have the units, the wearables, been subject to the drop fall test, and if so, how robust are they? I know we had a comment about this when we were talking before about have we broken any yet, and the answer was no. So Heather, again, from your experience, they're pretty robust, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. The devices themselves are water resistant, so it's fine if they're out in the rain. We've had them go through washing machines before, and they still work. Again, I think Tommy mentioned they're very lightweight, and people start to forget that they're there. Well, it does happen. They wear them home, and it goes in the wash with their shirt. They're generally pretty robust. They can handle humidity. They can get dirty. They can be wiped off with just any sort of sanitation wipe, no big deal. We've had them dropped from about 40 feet on accident, and it did break. The clip actually broke on it. The device itself was fine. The clip broke. So they're pretty hardy unless you're going to run it over with a fork truck or drop it from very high at height. It survives most atmospheres just fine. Some companies actually create a tether system, so kind of your fail safe. So the device, the clip has a little hole at the bottom of it, and oftentimes where there's potential drop hazards or potential to rub it really hard against the wall or a warehouse rack, they'll take a clip system, a little tether, and clip it from the device to their vest or their shirt.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Just moving on to another question. So one of the questions is, has the data identified any types of activities that you might stop as it puts people in a vulnerable position? Or allowed you to change risk assessments and method statements, e.g. how would you approach works where you are stretching, e.g. cantilevered works? I think we've spoken a lot about this when we've been talking about the implementation and where there's things where you can't improve from an individual, what kind of things can you do about the task? So Pete, did you want to take this question?
Yeah, I can do. Thanks, Jenny. Good, very good question as well. Yes, it has. We're still very, very early in our journey with this and the total device. But yes, we are already seeing data that we know individuals cannot change. So yes, we are looking at the risk assessments, as I say, through the video data. It's not just the risk assessment we can change; it's actual training as well with our individuals. But yes, we are seeing it, and like I mentioned in the presentation, it's a case that we are looking at reducing the actual exposure. So it's rotating tasks around. So through the risk assessment, we're actually, as I say, reducing the length of time that operatives are faced in these positions where we know that there is a risk or high exposure to manual handling. So yes, the answer to it is yes, and yes, we are changing risk assessments to reduce that risk, that residual risk level to an acceptable level.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pete. Okay, so another question is about, are there any checks for potential movement restrictions, e.g. from pre-existing conditions or old injuries? So I suppose this comes back down to kind of the individual assessment. And Heather, I don't know, do you know if it's been used as a device for anyone that's got any pre-existing like musculoskeletal disorders and how it helps to support those as an individual?
Yeah, I would actually say it's kind of an organizational decision how they want to use the technology. The wearable devices often get used for like the new hire onboarding process. It might get used for early intervention. So somebody comes to you and says, "Yeah, my shoulder's really been bothering me. I don't want to go see a doctor just yet, but it's kind of hurting." I would deploy a wearable at that point. Help that person learn how to move differently. If you realize that they're doing a lot of overhead reaching, then maybe you go in with the video analysis piece and try to figure out some problem solving there. Devices definitely get used in the return to work process. So if somebody is injured, they come back to work, the device can help just make sure that they don't either aggravate or re-injure themselves. So there's certainly a lot of different use cases for the wearable tech, and I think part of it is just how the organization plans to use it. And knowing that ahead of time is actually quite important to the deployment of the tech.
Thank you, Heather. And another question for you, Heather. Do you know if there's any plan to have it integrated with any other like apps or wearable technology? I'm thinking maybe they're thinking about iPhone and Apple Health. Is there any thoughts that the data might be integrated with other systems?
Well, so we are working on integration right now with ProGlove. So that's mostly for warehousing and logistics. We can integrate with other platforms potentially, but the use case really needs to be there. So in the States, a lot of companies use HSE platforms to manage all of their health and safety programs, from hazardous waste management to injury tracking. SOTR can potentially integrate into those systems. In terms of other apps, not really on the radar just yet, as we're kind of working on a couple other partnerships at the moment and building out SOTR Genius.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of our questions. If anyone wants to ask anything after the webinar, feel free to send an email. We can get those answered via email. I'm sure you'll find everyone on LinkedIn if you want to ask them any individual questions. So I just would like to take the time just to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for all of our speakers, and particularly thank you to GKR for sharing their early experiences. I know this is definitely something I'm really excited about, the opportunities for the industry from a scaffolding perspective, but to all the trades, and hopefully we can start seeing some of those improvements in those shocking statistics we spoke about at the beginning. So thank you everyone for joining us, and I think our plans are to host another event later on in the year to share a little bit more about what we've learned, and how you potentially might want to integrate this within your own business. So thanks again, take care everyone, bye bye.